Before I tell you what this record is, who made it, when it came out, I want to read you something slowly, like a page out of a novel, because that's what I believe this is. Broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the stairs, you know they don't care. I can't take the smell. I can't take the noise. Got no money to move out. I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room and roaches in the back. Junkies in the alleyway with a baseball bat. I tried to get away, but I couldn't get far, 'cause a man with a tow truck repossessed my car. Don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. And I kinda cheated just a little bit because I didn't open with the 2 opening lines, because that was a dead giveaway, but I'll give this to you now. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Did that sound like a song to you? Many of you already know what that song is, and maybe a few of you don't. Or did it sound like a story? Because here's the thing, when Melly Mel laid that track down in 1982, there was no flow to it. There were no drums under it when he first written it. Duke Bote, I want to say Bote, but I think it's Bote, wrote it on his piano in his mother's basement. It started as words on a page long before it was ever recorded. So that's the question I want to sit with for the next half hour or so. Not, is this a great song? Everybody already knows it's a great song. It's one of the pillars of the foundation of rap. It's a classic. The question is more or less, what happens when you read the message? What is the message in the message? And what happens when you read the message like you'd read Richard Wright, the way you'd read a short story collection? What do you see that you don't hear? Well, think about that again. What do you see when you slow it down? And what did you see that you didn't hear? Or did you automatically start, saying the lyrics with me? Anyway, this is Keipeki Sessions. I'm Nicole, and this is the second installment of our Black Music Month series. So let's get into it. Now, for legality reasons, I'm not going to play the track. We're not trying to pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for rights for 30 seconds, but I will link the track in all the descriptions, whether be it on YouTube or on our social pages, so that you can listen to it yourself. I'm actually going to go back to that once we conclude this podcast, because we'll talk about that a little bit more. But let's actually do a little work here. Like I said, I wanted to treat each verse, um, and I probably didn't say it, but I do want to treat each verse like it's a scene from a story. Um, what's the setting? That's where we'll start first. So let's visually walk it block by block. This isn't abstract poverty. It is a specific sidewalk. Broken glass everywhere. So you're hearing it under your shoe before you see it. The smell baked into the whole verse, that is a mix of garbage and piss in the hallway, that anybody who's lived in a building like that can tell you that's an unusual smell. I can't, because I've never lived in that, but I have been in places where there is an unusual odor and it is really, really strong. It is unmistakable. So, where I really want to go with this is that the scene isn't static. There is movement. A rat described almost like a stalking giant, roaches crunching underfoot, a man passed out on the stairs, a junkie nodding against a door that he can't even get into. And then, later on down the verses there, a child is born right in the middle of it. Same flat tone as everything else in the verse. There's no violin strings. There's no this poor child. The kid, the infant, just exists there. One more thing in the same documentary tone as the rats and the glass. None of this is metaphor, it's inventory. This is what is actually there and what is actually being experienced. So that's the thing about realist fiction. Think people tend to forget. The power isn't in the symbolism sometimes. I shouldn't say sometimes, but the power isn't in the symbolism. It's in the specificity. You don't write, oh, the neighborhood was rough. You write the exact texture of the glass under your shoe. You don't write, oh, this is hard on a family. You just put a kid in his circumstances on the sidewalk or let him sit there in the same flat light as everything else that is around you. Melly Mel and Duke Bote are doing the writer's job, making you be there in your five senses, not telling you how to feel about it, not dictating to you, but placing you in the moment so you can feel it for yourself. Once you're standing on that block with him, the glass, the smell, the rats, the kid, all of the song, all of it, it encompasses you, but it doesn't let you stay there as an observer for too long. It pulls you, and it pulls you inside of his own body, into his psyche. Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. That's not him describing the streets anymore. That's him describing what the streets have done to him, including the kid he's responsible for in the middle of it. This is what's happening right now in real time. And you can feel the difference. Everything before that line was outside of him and what he saw, what he smells, the experience of it all, what's happening on the sidewalk. This line inside of him is the pressure, is the nerve fraying sensitivity that the body is close to some type of breaking point that he hasn't named yet. That's the sensory technique that is turned from outward to inward. He's not describing a feeling in the abstract, oh, I'm stressed or this is hard. He's giving you his psychological state and he's giving you the physical state along with it. Close to the edge. Now think about that. And I think most of us when we do, we think about the cliff's edge. It's like, oh, I'm gonna drop. I'm about to jump. I'm about to fuck. I'm about to lose my ish. Um, you can feel all of that in your own chest because it's a metaphor that you can relate to. Um, you are understanding what it means before you really know what he really means. It is it's the same instinct as the broken glass, as a smell in the hallway, but it's immediate. Except for now, you feel it and it's in the nerve and you feel the nervous system starting to give. And all of this is a craft move. This is not by accident. It is the writer understanding a point of view and knowing exactly when to pull you in to himself and knowing when to put you on the sidewalk. You can track it across the rest of the song. Mel keeps sliding in between, "Oh, look at this." And this is what's happening to me. The observer participant relationship goes back and forth from observer to participant, back to observer, back to participant. It's almost cinematic, kind of like a camera pulling out for that wide shot. And then suddenly you're back in his head again. And this, my friend, is not a new literary tradition. And I'm not saying new because, yes, the song was written over 44 years ago. Um, but before that, this was a part of literary tradition. Um, let's take a second and see where this unflinching documentation of Black life, where it really stemmed from and what is its lineage. So I'm going to talk about Richard Wright's Native Son, which was released in 1940, and it had the same impulses. You don't look away from the conditions, and the writer didn't soften them for the reader to be comfortable. You don't let the violence become the point either. The conditions are the point, just as the message. The conditions are the point. In Native Son, Bigger Thomas doesn't exist because he's evil. He exists because of what the Chicago South Side made structurally possible for him and impossible for him. And then there's Claude Brown's Man-Child in a Promised Land, written in 1965, or published, I should say. That's Harlem written from the inside of it. Brown lived what he was describing. That's memoir doing the same work as fiction does, refusing the comfortable version of the story. And what's interesting is the message sits between both these two literary traditions. It has Wright's outside narrator eye for detail, but it also has Brown's lived authority. These guys are both from the Bronx and Englewood, New Jersey, describing what they actually watched happen across the street from where they live. And Duke Bote talked about sitting in his living room watching things happening in the park across the street, and the song coming out almost cinematic because of that. He was trying to hold a mirror, not write a fantasy. Which gets to something about journalism of that era that it also could not do. What fiction really wasn't doing either, at least not for the mass audience. News coverage of the South Bronx in the late 70s was mostly crisis footage, burning buildings, quote unquote, the Bronx is burning, right there in a World Series broadcast. It was spectacle shot from outside with no interior life or commentary attached to it. And literary fiction, the stuff getting reviewed and taught, it wasn't going there at all either. It was just going through a single celebrated novel of the decade instead of an ongoing record and witness to what was actually happening. The message is doing something closer to a field of recording. It's not arguing a thesis, it's documenting the way an oral historian documents, the way a war correspondent documents. Here's the block, here's the apartment, here's the kid, here's the rent that's 3 weeks late. No interruption, layered on top, the details are the argument. That's the founding move of the entire literary mode, not just a song. Hip hop coming out of the Bronx in the mid to late 70s was creating something close to a new genre of witness literature, oral, performed, looping documentary. Instinct of Wright and Brown into a 4-minute recorded verse instead of a 300-page book, which meant it could travel in a completely different way. A novel takes hours to read, but this experience, this bearing witness, took 3 to 4 minutes. Suddenly, you got a form of literature that is portable, repeatable, and built for a community that maybe wasn't being handed a lot of novels about itself in the first place. So let's go a little deeper and go to the heart of your questions. Because document the conditions without flinching can tip over into something else if you're not careful. So I asked this question: when does social realism become exploitation? Ooh, you don't hear me. When does social realism become exploitation? Let's talk about it. And that is the question that we want to kind of sink our teeth into because, you know, we like to argue about a lot of stuff. Anyway, that's some personal commentary. Anyhow, I'm going to say that one more time because it for me it hit something when the question was posed. I think we need to talk about this in 2 ways. And these are my opinions. And you know what opinions are, elbows and anyhow, I think the line about who the gaze serves, right, wrote Native Son from an inside understanding of what made Bigger Thomas possible. He wrote it from him he wrote it from his gaze and service some understanding. His implicating the system, not putting bigger on display for the reader's discomfort or thrill. The minute the suffering became spectacle from the outside experience to consume, look how bad it is over there without any type of inner dialogue, any of the structural scaffolding that makes it possible, then we tip over into exploitation. The message protects itself from that by staying inside the perspective the whole time. And I'm not talking about the individual perspective. Mel isn't narrating somebody else's pain from a safe distance, for an outside audience's benefit. He's sliding in and out of being the guy living it. Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. That isn't observational. It's a first person warning. And there's also a version of this question that's really about the audience. Duke Bote himself talked about it, um, about how the song ending up bringing hip hop to a much whiter audience, especially in Europe. So you've got Black artists documenting Black urban life for understanding and community, with total honesty, and watching that honesty being consumed by audience who may or may not have the same type of skin, more or skin in the game, I should say. No stakes in the conditions, just the aesthetics of danger. So is that the song's fault? Is that the novel's fault? Or is that what happens to any honest art once it leaves the room in which it was made in? I personally don't think it's the song's fault in this instance, and I'm going to be very specific when I say this instance because this is my podcast. And I don't think it's the song's fault. I think it's evidence that the song succeeded as literature as it traveled, the way Native Son traveled to readers who never stepped foot in the Chicago South Side. The risk of exploitation isn't really inside the text, it's in how it gets received and repackaged downstream. And I can go into a whole conversation about black exploitation. Was that part of this, or are we narrating from the inside out? It can get convoluted, and I'm being very forthcoming here and saying, you can take it either way. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Um, Having literature live outside of itself, and especially social realism literature, can always be taken into an exploitative fashion. Those are other people's intentions. If it is written with the intention to document and to give voice to subjects that go unnoticed, um, and people don't think that are lived, that's a whole different topic. That's why we have art, to express those things. But anyway, let me bring it on back. Let me bring it on back. Um, okay, so this came out in 1982, and we're sitting here reading it in 2026. What's changed and what hasn't? We're talking about social realism. Well, what's changed physically is that a lot of those specific places in the South Bronx blocks don't look like that anymore. The Bronx's burning landscape got reinvested in, got rebuilt, reinvested in and unfortunately gentrified in some places. The crack era, the song was sitting right in front of the edge of that. That's a closed historical chapter, even though the aftershocks aren't closed. What hasn't changed is the underlying structure the song is actually describing: concentrated poverty, underfunded schools, a kid born into an environment he didn't choose and can't easily exit, mass incarceration as the same as it's at the same time waiting at the end of the verse. That's still very much an active system, arguably much more than in 1982. So you could almost say the literal details have moved, but the architecture is the same building, just different paint on the same foundation. The last thing in this section, and I think it might be the most important thing in the whole episode, is that Melly Mel didn't actually want to record this song. The whole group thought it was corny. Uh, Flash himself didn't want to be on the track, and it was basically Sylvia Robinson. She had to push it into existence against their own instincts and will. And so, what does that tell us? And then I can kind of relate, because sometimes I will write things and I will think it is corny. I think it's like, yeah, yeah, who wants to read this? I'll give it to somebody like, oh, this isn't bad. This is good. I won't say great, but it's, I get more praise than I was expecting. Um, it's not a small detail that sometimes you make a piece of art and you kind of think it's lackluster. I think it tells us that something is true about truth telling, especially in this type of forum. Melly Mel and the Furious Five, at the time, they were putting out party songs. They were rhyming and boasting and dissing. That's what worked, and they knew what worked. Talking about and documenting actual conditions of your own life feel the opposite of the image that was being created. Too unglamorous. It wasn't hip hop, and we're still in the stage where people are trying to define what hip hop was and what it was for yet. So the resistance wasn't is this isn't true. The resistance was this is too true to be entertainment. That reluctance is almost a tell sign of a song is getting at something real, something an artist hasn't been given permission. Uh, it's a thing that they don't want to say out loud. Wright went through some similar things with Native Son. There was a real anxiety about how a white reading public would receive Bigger Thomas, whether the book would read as confirming stereotypes of the author or what the author was trying to dismantle. Either way, in both instances, for Mel and Wright, it was uncomfortable. The discomfort an artist feels going in is sometimes the surest sign that the work is doing something the form has yet to do. And you have to get past that uncomfortable feeling. I mean, where would we be if we all did not know? Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. I mean, I was a young girl singing that. I didn't have no edge at that time, but I was cool because I know what it was. I was singing a rap song. Anyhow, I've kind of dragged this out a little long. So I'm gonna bring a challenge to you. And this is a new thing. And hopefully, as we get more listeners, we'll get some participants. But here's what I want you to do. And I'm circling back to what I said at the top of this little episode. I'm going to link the message in any of the descriptions on our YouTube and on our socials. I want to ask you, please, to actually go listen to it from start to finish, all the way through. Um, no background noise, no doing something else. I want you to sit and I want you to listen intently as if you were listening to a short story. Get the beat out of your head, even though I know that's hard. List the details: the land, the grass, the smell, the rats, what else? Because there are a few things I did not talk about. All of it, list it and really soak it in. And then I want you to turn around and I'm going to give you a writing prompt. I want you to write 2 sentences describing your street, not your neighborhood in general, but your actual block, your street, your apartment, your walk up, your country road. If somebody were to walk into it, what would they see? Describe it the way Melly Mel describes his. No judgment. No, this is a great place. This is a crappy place. This is none of that. Just what's there. Got a lot of stray cats? Write about them. You have neighbors that keep a lot of junky cars? Write about it. What did you see? What do you smell if you stood at the corner for 30 seconds? That's the assignment. And then think about what kind of story would those 2 sentences tell? And can you build a story off of it? Think you can. And so, with that, I'm going to leave you with one other question. What details make a setting feel real and lived in? And what does it cost the artist to put them there? Sit with that. Think about what we just talked about in literature, realism in literature. Think about Mill having to revisit his own block and write those lines. Think about Wright sitting with Bigger Thomas's interior life long enough to write him honestly. The specifics that make writing feel true isn't free. Somebody has to actually look. And that's where I want to leave you today. So, this is the end of Keipeki Sessions, our Black music tribute during Black Music Month. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I had time researching it, and I will see you on the next one.